Basically, all the companies that are coming today, the startups that are coming today, are disrupting their existing industries. Our presumption is that the customer they are very unsure of what they want. You have to bring in a lot of trust factor.
If you have an idea which you strongly believe in and have the spirit of entrepreneurship thriving inside you, then trust me, this is the show totally for you. From the family of Reed Skyline, I welcome you to the 12th episode of The Business Boss. And there is this interesting quote that says, "Don't change yourself to fit the fashion, but change the fashion to fit yourself in." And I guess the guest of the day today is actually working on this principle through his fashion tech startup, where he makes sure that our wardrobe is filled with the clothes that just reflect us. And not only that, his venture has been recognized as one of the top 10 fashion tech startups in India by the Silicon India. So, to know more about him and his interesting venture, let us welcome the guest of the day today, Mr. Sahid Gumari, the co-founder and the CEO of Hilo Designs Hyderabad. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's a good introduction.
Thank you, sir.
Very good introduction. Thank you very much.
I felt it so apt for what you are doing. So, without any delay, let us directly go to the questions. Tell us about the Hilo Designs.
Sure. So, Hilo Design as a venture is started by me and Mona. Mona is my sibling.
Okay.
So, she has a design background. I come from, I've done my MBA and post which I work with Paytm in terms of product management.
Okay.
So, this is an industry which requires a design expertise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem fundamentally, we started thinking about, how, I think the quote that it says really fits in here. It's about how can we solve, personalization for everybody, personalization for the masses. Most often or not, you generally end up going to shopping, retail shopping. You are not sure what suits you, right? You take your friend along, your family member along, to say that, okay, does it suit me or not? But they're not the experts, right? At the end of the day. So we do fill our clothes because of the retail brands push us with offers. You buy so many shirts, t-shirts, tops and stuff like that. That fills your wardrobe. That obviously gives you satisfaction of shopping. But most of it, you don't wear it more times, right? Only there will be 10 or few clothes which you will wear repeatedly. The problem here is that one, your lack of understanding of fashion, right? If especially, let's say for example, you're a celebrity and you've been curated by a stylist or a designer, that obviously suits you more, then you would love to wear it. No, but obviously it cannot go to the masses, right? How can we get this level of personalization to the masses, where a designer or a stylist can tell them what suits or what doesn't and customize for them is what we are looking at. And how can we scale this model for everybody? Where you can have our app or Hilo Design as a brand would be your personal designer.
Oh. So mass customization
so that's why
is the idea.
Yes, the mass customization is the idea. That essentially is about, if you have to put it in one sentence, how can you democratize the luxury of customization or personalization to the masses? And I believe, coming from the technology background, I had a very broad problem statement that how can you get design personalization to the masses? And obviously my sister being a fashion designer, we kind of brainstormed a lot as to, and I've been very much a believer that is possible, and especially to the mass premium markets. So we came up with this model, and we started this brand, and we're doing pretty well till now. Let's see.
Congratulations to you for doing very well and for the recognition also. So talking about it, you're from the fintech industry, as you were saying. So,
Yes.
why did you suddenly feel that you want to step into the fashion tech industry from the jump from one to another?
Right. So, yes, I am actually. I was in fintech for quite like a few years post my MBA, and then even I work in a blockchain industry, and especially that also is
Huh.
blockchain has multiple use cases, but it also major use cases in fintech industry, right? So yeah, I've been more into the industries, but the thing is, fintech is an industry that started. Basically all the companies that are coming today, the startups that are coming today, are disrupting their existing industries or companies that are existing in the industry uh, by basic one principle that they're more and more consumer focused, better consumer experience, and obviously a lot of other things, right? But the fundamental principle is that how can you make the consumer experience so good and the convenience so well that you can you can disrupt the industry, and nothing better than technology could do it, right? At a scale and at the experience which is unparalleled and same to everybody. So fintech is one such industry which has been, obviously over the past, 10 years or so, it's been very well, very tried to kind of disrupt the industry, and there are like good players who are doing it. But when I see at fashion, and I look at design in general, when I started, we had this idea that if you look at fashion as an industry, there is technology to sell fashion. The marketplaces, Myntra and all. There is no tech to kind of disrupt the way consumer experience can change in fashion. Like for example, how could for example, a particular dress that suits you, right? And is a personal assistant that can happen. Why can't an app do that, right? So that your all this unwanted wardrobe that has been sitting on the wardrobe can really doesn't need to exist. Or so there can be through technology there can be a way in which the purchase of your clothing can change, and it can be more personalized. It can be a better curated. Your wardrobe can be better done and very efficient in that sense, right? So I felt there is a big missing piece, and the retail brands are just focused on pushing out their inventory. So they're really not looking at, see, when you're looking at an inventory level model, you are just saying that I have this product, push it to the customer. Now obviously the product solves the purpose, and it's okay, that might be the case, but at the end of the day each person is different.
True.
Now that's fundamentally the concept of mass customization or personalization, right? So now I'm damn sure that retail brands going further will implement to kind of give that some kind of personalized experience. But there is a large gap between what consumer wants in terms of the better experience and what the market provides today. And I'm pretty confident that technology can really, really disrupt this space. And I see it is a very nascent stage in terms of fashion. So that's where I wanted to kind of have my experience of building consumer products for using technology to kind of disrupt the fintech space. Whatever experience that I have gathered from there, I wanted to build this brand that way, So that's where the transition happened.
But then, sorry to interrupt. When you said about bringing in the technology to this fashion industry, something popped in my head. So this VR and AI personal assistant all have been in use outside India. But do you think that these technologies will be easily accepted by the people here? How long, will they take to accept it?
So see, it's already coming in, right? So if you see your Insta filters, right? There are Insta filters where you can put something on your face. That's kind of AR. Now, AR is gonna be like it is gonna hit the market like the masses. It hits like you can create your own Insta filter like anything in 20-30 minutes. So AR is gonna be pretty common, and you can see the lens card where you can see your lens on the top of it, and they've been pioneer in that, and their experience is better in that sense. So, and it somehow comes under the fashion and accessories market. So that adaptability is going to be pretty easy, and that's one of the things where you are trying to solve e-commerce model How can you have better purchase experience over the offline retail experience? And AR is one of the aspects for it. Not all the aspects, but one of the aspects for it, and one of the big ones. So that you can see what it will look before buying. So yeah, that's one strong aspect, and that will be included in our model. But AR is not everything, right? For example, tomorrow retail brands can implement AR in their online e-commerce. This thing that doesn't mean that there is a level of customization or personalization the customer wants will be done, right? It is only up to, at the end of the day, it is only up to it his experience. Our problem statement lies more fundamental in terms of he doesn't. Our assumption is that the customer they are very unsure of what they want, right? How can a designer assisted model can work? Obviously, we will include AI. That's what we say. It's a design assisted AI enabled model where we learn, and some of the things can be standardized. For example, just to give you an example, let's say, for example, particular particular body type. Okay, particular body type. Let's say you have a long shoulders or you have a broad shoulders, and can have particular type of fitting, right? So this is a one-to-one rule, right? So some of these things can be obviously done through AI and give a better experience, and have a manual experience of designer also in between wherever it is required. Or color suggestions can be AI enabled. So it's gonna be a dual model to start with in terms of a designer and AI model, and slowly we would try to give that experience which is more designer led, and with AI we will kind of increase the scale of transactions that's going to even do.
All I could think is no wonder why you have been recognized as one of the top 10 fashion startups. So moving on, let us just go back to the initial stage of Hilo Design. So what are the marketing efforts that you took to create the brand for yourself? Because that is very crucial in the starting days. So
the challenge with Hilo Design is not just it's a fashion startup, right? So for example, if I have to start a fashion startup, one of the brilliant things happen to the market is your social media in terms of Instagram and all. You can start a brand tomorrow and you can start making sales.
Yes.
But the thing is, Hilo Design, it is a bit difficult because we are coming into the market like no one and saying that this is a premium brand. And our products average order value for our products is being like 4,000 rupees. Okay. Now, how would you convince a customer who is looking at this premium brand and saying that why should I pay a damn 4,000 for these guys, right? So you're not just establishing a brand, you're putting up a brand which is luxury, right? Yes. In a sense, we are kind of competing with the premium brands in the market. So that's the challenging part, right? It's not just about just launching the brand. So how did we go about marketing in this case is that, hygiene for any fashion brand is the design, right? So at the end of the day, what design you put in the market is the hygiene, right? It is given. If that design is not good, then you're not in the business of it, right? So fortunately, we have a great taste for it. We have curated some of the best products, and few things that is very important for, currently the Instagram-led business industry is that you have to be very meticulous, or what you say, you need to look at each and everything in terms of the way the photograph is taken, the way the model is posing, the way an outfit is on her, the fittings, and the way the color contrasts are there with the background. So everything matters. That's the first learning that I've got when I started the brand, is that everything that you're putting out to the public has to be premium. When they perceive it, then they look at it, they say that, okay, this is a very good brand. So the first impression of any customer is what they see of you, and what they see of you is your photos, right? So fundamentally, we've been very, very, keen on what we put up on our social media, how we take our pictures, Though we've been also one of those guys did not spend a lot of money in this shoots. There have been a lot of community people who helped us to get through, but we've been very keen on that. The way that we kind of introduce ourselves on Instagram, the way we kind of all the photo shoots and all of that. Post that, you have to bring in a lot of trust factor for any brand, right? So we got in, I mean, fortunately, because people liked our designs and all, there are more and more influencers, celebrities, without even paying buck, because they liked our design, because it's also used for them, right? They also want to put good pictures of themselves on Instagram, right? Or whatever social media. So it really helped us because they really liked our products. Now, that's the second thing that brought us a lot of trust in the whole market, right? In terms of the celebrities in and around the area of this state, we were able to get a good level of attraction in the market. That gave us reach, without putting any buck. That gave us, visibility and the trust factor. When you put someone premium around that side, it gives a trust. It's an association of something premium towards it. So these are the few things, and we have done multiple other things. Like we have done ads. We have, obviously, the important thing is word of mouth in the initial days. So we've been pretty careful as to whatever products that we have given. Though we've been very sticky on the price point. We did not come down because we want to be the premium. So, but whoever customers we service them, how much ever little they are, how many number of people they are, we did our best. We kind of went overboard in terms of service because we are at the end of the day premium brand, right? So some of these things kind of help us in terms of remarketing the whole thing. But you have to be social media savvy. You have to be. You cannot. You're not an initial brand. You can put up hoardings, right? You don't have that fund to put up crores of money and like lakhs of money to kind of put up hoardings or have a. So, and the third other thing is that you have to have a physical space, because at the end of the day, I mean, today it's a different world, post-COVID probably, but physical space gives some kind of guarantee. There is some sense in that, and also people's, especially putting whole lot of money. Like there are orders which individual people put as a lakh of order for one individual order, right? So they want to know you personally, or they want to come to the studio personally, especially when you're not that famous, right? Not that not that brand equity is there, but not very huge. So some of the things that you have to really take care, especially when you're putting up the luxury brand, and I think we have done it very well. So we've been able to get good brand equity in the market. I think that's our achievement. I mean, we have done good sales, but I think brand equity is something that when you establish, the sales is given. I mean, it's an add-on to your brand, right? It only keeps better. It keeps getting better. So is your revenue if you're kind of pushing it further, pushing your inventory, pushing your marketing, pushing your influences around the skill. So yeah, we've done that so well, and really looking at forward in terms of getting it done more.
That's very interesting to listen to how we have been working on every aspect very minutely. Right. So talking about the people, so here in your business, obviously the expert designers or the important stakeholders. So initially, what are the challenges that you had in hiring them, and how did you make sure that they are also on the same page in providing the service?
Right. So yeah, so one thing that happens all the time is that the person who is on the job of doing, more or less moves away from what a consumer wants. I mean, I will explain it a bit. Let's say, why do you need a product manager? Because product manager is supposed to think from the consumer side, so that the technology guys, when they are developing, he makes sure that they're not just making the functionality of it, but the experience of the consumer should be better, right?
True.
The same is the case with any of the industry, right? If you go from manufacturing, the guy who is manufacturing a phone doesn't really care about this. So the job, people who are on the job, lost in the details of the job, so that they really can't focus on the customer. So essentially, the important aspect of a founder is always think like a customer and be very picky. One of your annoying customers is the founder, right? So you have to be that annoying guy, and fortunately in my case, my sibling is a co-founder and she is a designer. She has a great taste in products. She is very keen in terms of the choices that she makes, obviously, but I also very keen in terms of the experience of the customer. So you have to work in tandem, right? It is a relation. It is same as how a product manager works with the tech guys. So you have to work with your designers, and so you make sure your consumer experience is the priority than anything else. So yeah, so what are some of the challenges that obviously you face is you have to keep reminding them, you are that one of the guys who are the gateway to kind of make anything into the public or go to the customers. You have to make sure it is made for them in that sense. So yeah, that's one of the challenges, but that's a part of it. And any of the, not just in fashion, I think most of the industries, the same challenge is about there should be a team or a people who are focused towards the customer. And in that case, the business guys are the ones who should be. The designers, let them do their job, and you have to meddle a little to know where you have to meddle and where you should not. You have to give them the design independence, and you have to think from the customer side.
It's actually amazing. So far, I've learned that customer is the king. But then what I learned from what you said is we as the owners should be the, annoying customers, so that we always keep our people in check. So moving on, again, talking about the people, irrespective of being a CEO, how important is to have a very strong, relationship with your creative team, since they are the ones, they are in instant connection with the customers, especially in this fashion industry.
No, it's not just being a CEO. You have to have the relationship with all your employees matters, right? As a co-founder, for example.
Okay.
So the CEO is a very I don't like the title. The title, it is very corporate-ish. But as a co-founder, the job is very, one of the primary jobs. Sorry.
That's okay.
One of the primary jobs of a co-founder is that the relationship that you maintain with your employees, not just with the design team or any particular. See, all the teams are pretty important for me, right? Even the foot soldier who is an operations guy is pretty important. So, so the important thing that as a co-founder that you have to do is to inspire them. Right?
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know.
No, that's okay, sir. Please have some water, sir.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so the important thing that you have to do is you have to inspire your people. You have to make them realize that they are part of something big, especially when you're at the early stage, right? So you're not a big MNC, you're not a big company. You have to have a rapport which is friendly as well as assertive. There is a nice balance between both of them, and I think, unfortunately, I am able to do that. I don't know how others do it, but I have a very good rapport. I swing between both sides. One important aspect that I've learned working with some of the other co-founders, my bosses before, is that it's important that you give that respect to the employee. Make sure you tell them that they're part of something very big, especially when you're early stage. Make sure you correct them, even if it is required a bit of, scolding, but it is always on the job. Okay, you cannot go out of the job, right? So it is always on the work. That's my fundamental principle, and the rapport that you maintain with them. And you have to, one of the biggest things and difficult things is that you have to really give them whys of it. What I meant by saying is that if you just tell someone do it, okay, there is no fun, because that guy just, if you tell him why it is important, you know, if the person really understands if what is the importance of the job, that's when the ownership increases, right?
True.
And you always have to hire people with ownership. So fundamentally, I have worked with that principle. Whatever I know is something that I've worked on. So these are some of the things I make sure I balance with my employees. And I want people who come to my office with a lot of passion, and because they're working, because they're not just for today but for the future. And I have some bet on the company, right? I want them to put a bet on me and the company.
That's
If someone is not putting a bet on me or my company, I don't want them. Because see, it's all about that in life, right? You have to take risk at some level. See, I have taken the risk at another level. Probably they are taking the risk at 50%. That's okay, but I want that, right? So some of these things are the things that I really look for the people, and also some of these things is what I kind of try to maintain this rapport with employees, so that they be their best, and they feel also happy at the same time contributing.
As you rightly pointed out, communicating the vision and then making them to take the ownership and giving the feedback and maintaining that rapport are very, very important in maintaining, having the human resources in the business. So moving on, how do you think this retail space in the fashion industry is going to change? Will it even be relevant in the future given the COVID scenario?
Given the COVID scenario, the answers can be anything. But see, one thing I would tell is that it's not going to go off with COVID, right? I mean, I always kind of have this habit. It's like demonetization, right? You did not stop cash, right? What is going to happen is that
it's going to monetized. So it will take
probably the fintech, like how fintech is, the valuation is going to shoot up, or they're going to bet. The virtual is going to, obviously the online is going to bet, but the physical is not going anywhere. It's going to stay, but it's going to have its own problems. The retails, obviously the whole people who bet big on retails is going to suffer. One of the fundamental things I believe when COVID happened is that I think early stage startups are in a better position than the bigger companies in any industry. In especially the industries affected by COVID, early stage startups have a bigger, better leverage than the startups which are in retail. Now, in bigger ones, the companies which are bigger ones, right? So why is that? Because see, if bigger companies have a lot of capital which is already put up, and a lot of already retail space which is already taken. For example, if you're talking about retail, so they have certain targets that they have to reach to kind of, keep their burn low, or keep things going, right? So there are a lot of things at stake. For startups, we are nimble. You can just cut here and there. You can cut here and there, fine tune yourself to the market, push. If startups who are thinking that we are in a bad position, they are wrong. I mean, there are cases where COVID completely impacted a startup. I understand, right? The industry itself is gone. I understand. But otherwise, it's an opportunity for you to craft yourself to the market. But the craft yourselves to the post-COVID world, which the bigger companies will take a lot of time to do that.
True.
Right? Yeah, and you can take a piece of theirs, and the smallest piece of theirs you take, you would be better off.
Very practical answer, sir. And now I'm going to ask you an interesting question. I believe since you have partnered with your sister in starting up this venture, so how do you manage the personal space and the professional space? Because there are a lot of youngsters outside who have joined with your close friends, and they end up, having conflicts between each other. So how do you manage that?
So I would be wrong if I don't say we would not have conflicts. So one thing that happens when you do with a sibling is that there is no personal or professional boundary, right? I being that annoying customer, or as I told, I'm always bothering, right? So they, like, if you are a co-founder who lives somewhere else, I leave off, when we talk for the day and the day ends, you go up your home. So it doesn't work. right? We are 24/7 on this, and obviously, I am on it or she is on it. Here, whoever pushes each other. But the advantage is that we are 24/7 on it, right? And it's important at the early stages that we are in sync, you know, at the highest level, and that we are in sync in terms of what we want to do, and all of that. Some of the advantages are that we kind of always in talks, fine tuning things, how to kind of we are always on that. Personal decreases and professional increases. That's what happens. So that's, I don't know if it's a minus or not, but you end up spending more time with your sibling. What more than that you want, right? So that's there. But you would always fight. So I think if both are mature enough to take the fight is in the spirit of the company, it's always okay. So I think we became that mature. Starting with there are issues, but we are mature in that sense that everything that we are doing is in terms of the company, right? So that is always the case. That's what I'm telling. When you deal with the employee also, you should not worry about their personal space. You should only worry about their work and what they're giving you. If you keep on the work, it's always great. And if you take it to your personal level, it's not. So I think we have reached at a position where we are mature enough to kind of really diverse, and that really helps. So there are a lot of positives for us, because especially I come from the business tech side of things, she being design, and the amalgamation is our company, right? So how much better we are in sync, that well the company moves forward. And I think we are in very good sync, and that way it's a very good positive. And you don't need to worry about shares. You don't need to, like, there is no headache of a lot of just being frank with you. So, but there are some, obviously the negatives are just that, it's 100%. It ends up being that 80% professional and 20% personal. Probably we will learn more to spend more personal time the time coming. But I think for me at least, it's a good deal to be a sibling starting. So it's only about, I'm telling, there needs to be some level of maturity. Not just because you are a sibling or your friend, you let go of your job, or you let go of you let the other partner go of not doing something, or not taking responsibility, or not doing stuff. That's not the deal. Then that doesn't make sense. If they are expert in their field, like for example, it's not because it's my sister I started a company, because she's an expert in the design, right? So if they do their job, it doesn't matter if they are sibling, not sibling, and a lot of things. Right? I think that's what I believe.
It's very interesting. As you said, if we focus on why we started the business, that will definitely not be conflicts. Even if there is conflict, we can actually maturely handle it. So since you are a management student, you have done your MBA, I thought of asking this question to you. There are so many, post-graduation students who have lost their faith because they lost their summer internship project, which seemed to be very, very important for their profile. So what do you like to tell them?
So I will tell two answers, okay? One for the people who have cash at home, one for people who don't have cash. Okay? For people who have cash at home, don't worry about making money. Okay? Worry about earning skill. See, there is a concept in people. I never understood. See, I have done my MBA. In marketing and strategy. I never understood. I never wanted to get into something more finance roles, right? I don't know why, but somehow there is a balance in. There should be a balance in creativity and business. I felt somewhere that finance roles lost that. They focus on making money out of money in some sense, but whatever. So essentially, if people who have who can survive the coming days without money, this is for them, right? So who can survive without money? I think they should focus on companies which are future.
Okay.
And there are two types of people in this. People who want to start up, people who don't want to start up, right? People who want to start up, just join a company which is early stage. Get your hands dirty, okay? Just do any kind of work. Choose a good startup, okay? People who don't want to start up but also wants to specific, choose a profile which is the future. Okay. So don't worry about because some guy is giving you a finance role, but you don't like it, but you just want internship. I'm doing it because he's paying you some 5,000 rupees or 10,000 or 50,000. Doesn't make sense, right? What makes sense is what do you want to do in the future? If you want to become a product manager in the future, right? Then just do product management in one of the good companies without even taking money. Doesn't matter. Okay. So there is an equity in professional, today when I work from my Paytm, not that not that I did not get my salaries. What I'm saying is when I worked out of the company, there is an equity in the market for me, right? Equity development is important than making money. Though we all believe in present value of money, today 100 rupees is better. But in the future, you also have, if your equity is better, you will be paid better. So I think you should look at it that sense that what do you want to become in the future, right? And make sure that you basically get into that role. Do some work, people who know stuff, who talk confidently are the people who worked on ground. Okay. Their thoughts are structured, they know stuff because they worked on ground. So what I will say is important is that you work something that you like and what you want to become in the future, and focus on that profile, get into the best of the companies, doesn't matter the payment. So if you want money, then if you want salaries and all, summer internships hardly you will earn anything anyways. But I'm talking about the people who probably passing out and graduating, right? So again, here the thing is, don't be greedy, right? Your if I have to put money, your salary and equity, your equity in the market, always in the starting years give this higher because this will grow exponentially later. Okay, so if you don't give your equity in the market highest preference, you will get some amount today, but this growth is not going to be exponential, your salaries, right? So it's important that you choose the right profession, get the minimum money that you need, right? Because you have to survive in the market. At the same time, it is important that you build your equity in the market by choosing the right profession. Okay, and the best things in terms of getting the job is that just be relentless. Directly send a mail to the founder, directly call them up. Obviously you have to smart enough to get the role, that I cannot help, but you have to be prepared for your roles. But you should not shy away from asking for it, because today the market is tough. In 10,000 people, only 1,000 people might get recruited. So you have to directly reach out to the big guys, directly reach. LinkedIn is there, you have angel.co, a lot of good websites, or directly ping them up. So one of the things people, at least founders, look for is, if you're pinging me up, I feel that you already have some motivation. Okay, I feel if you're applying through LinkedIn or something job, I feel you lost it somewhere. You're just applying to 10 companies and you lost company. So there is certain level of priority and founders are very active. If you reply them, they will reply back. So I think it's not tough to get job. You have to be smart enough to crawl yourself in the market. Yeah, I think that's what I can tell.
That's a perfect advice for all those, post-graduation students. So finally, I'm coming to the favorite question of the show. What is your source of resilience, sir? That is something that keeps you going on and on in the business, irrespective of the challenges that you face every day.
So see, one of the things about entrepreneur is that entrepreneur already makes up his mind. Okay, so I made up my mind to start my own business back in my college, my first year of my engineering. And so there is certain sense of pride in doing your own business. It's not about the money, or it's not about this thing. It's certain sense of establishing your own company, right? At the end of the day. So that's what is the most important thing. So I'm prepared from quite some time. Okay, so I earned good salaries when I did my MBA from FMS Delhi, post which I worked with Paytm. So, but I was always prepared to let go of being comfortable, right? So fundamentally, that is important for anyone, right? And I get more fun doing my own stuff. So that was pretty easy for me to transition. That's one. Two is a resilience comes because I know, I always think this is nothing and there is even a bad day in the future. So I always think that this is not the bad day. There is a lot of bad days gonna come up, and I'm prepared like that in the mind. Okay, and if I am prepared, I prepare myself or people around me that this is nothing, and that's how I'm prepared. So it is pretty easy. I mean, I would not say it's not difficult for me to face issues or financial crunch or any of that sense, because I'm prepared. But at the same time, obviously not just because you will give up, you have issues, you have to figure that out. And I think if your focus, if you don't worry, then you will take actionable items. If you worry, then you will do nothing. So even if you're worrying, just you have to think through it, logically think through the mind and get out of it, and then just focus on the actionable things. And one of the times that every entrepreneur would have gone through is the recent COVID, where everyone, the interesting fact for entrepreneurs is that you don't have anything to do because you're sitting at home, and we tend to get impatient, right? At the same time, it is one of the times where you have to be resilient to kind of get through the whole thing, right? So your mind is constantly working, though you have nothing executed. So you will really creatively come out of that process. And 99% of the founders, if they are genuine good, if you're really not worried about all of this and worried about solving problem, I think they would have come out better in the COVID period, because they got a holiday, they thought through, they worried because their cash flow is stuck, they have a lot of things stuck. But at the same time, I think they would have come out with better decisions to kind of make better impact, better, lesser burn companies they would have made a lot of changes. I think, so you build your patience builds, your lot of things builds as and you grow, and your expectations are high for yourself, so that you don't really think, this is it, this is too bad day for me, because I always think there is a bigger bad day waiting for me, so it's okay.
That's great, sir. Since the start of the show, every answer of yours has been very detailing and very insightful. Thank you for being on the show today, sir. I'm sure that you would have also enjoyed talking with me today and addressing the audience.
Absolutely. I loved your questions, and more importantly, I've just been honest. I don't prepare stuff because I cannot really speak prepared. So probably I might have gone here and there, but I tell what is been my experience, and I think thanks for giving me this opportunity. It's been wonderful talking to you. I hope people watching this will learn at least something from this.
Definitely,
and, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. And my dear audience, I'm sure that you would have found this whole session very interesting as well as insightful. As Sahit was saying, step out of your comfort zone, but not out of your homes. So with that note, I'll meet you in another episode with another interesting personality. Till then, keep learning and keep growing all together. Thank you.
Reach Skyline. Embrace digital.